origin, interested in pursuing a career in science, technology, math, and engineering. It is an initiative of the AfroScience Network, a group of scientists and engineers committed to mainstreaming science in Africa by telling the stories of African scientists. At AfroScience Network, we amplify the voices of African scientists. If you would like to partner or even support or sponsor our activities in amplifying the voices of African scientists, please send us an email at info@afroscience.net. Today's theme will be the road to a PhD. Where do I start? And joining me on this exciting episode are three dynamic and passionate African scientists from around the world. I am myself a scientist at the French National Center for Scientific Research, France, and I am your host, Dr. Prince Nana Ameniampong. Hi, panelists. Good evening. Nice having you here.
Hello, good evening, Prince.
Can you hear me?
Yes, good evening, Daniel. Good evening to everyone.
Yeah, Daniel, can you hear me?
Oh, yes. Good evening, Prince. Can you hear me also?
Nice.
Okay.
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear. So we are happy. The AfroScience Network team is happy to have you as our panelist today. And today we want to inform our participants and our listeners about the road to doing a PhD. What are the steps involved? Is it quite easy to do, to start from the beginning and finish? And what are the things, the little tricks that they need to know? And so starting with, I will try to guide my listeners on some of the questions that will be pertinent in helping them to understand the theme for today's episode. So to start with, I would like you to give a bit of your life experiences. How would you grade your PhD experience? I'll start with Daniel.
Okay, thank you very much for inviting me for this program. And it's a pleasure to join you. And I say good evening to everybody also, those here and in Ghana, Nigeria, Kenya, and all the other countries involved. I wish I could speak in other languages so I can greet you, but in French, we say bonsoir tous. And maybe in Poland, we will say dzień dobry to everybody. So my name is Daniel J, and I am a research engineer at the Institute of Physical Chemistry at the University of Paris-Saclay in France. I have been a research scientist for the past 10 years after my master's degree from the Graduate School of Nuclear and Allied Sciences in Ghana. From there, I pursued a PhD, which was a joint PhD program funded by the European Union Erasmus Mundus Joint PhD Doctorate Program. And in King's College London, Military University of Technology in Poland, and then Czech Technical University in Czech Republic, in Prague. And from there, I pursued a postdoctoral degree, also from Institute of Optoelectronics at University Polytechnic here in France, and then joined the University Paris-Saclay. So for the past years, this is what I've been doing. And in the course of the discussion, I will tell more about you, about myself. Thank you.
Thanks, Daniel. That's quite impressive. So Kenny,
yes, as you said, that's quite a profile.
Hi, Daniel. So first, I want to say good evening to everyone. Maybe perhaps we could disable or we can deactivate the waiting room so that we do not get that click each time someone is joining. Maybe it helps. Okay, so I'm Kelechukwu Onkamike. I'm a Nigerian. Currently working as a research scientist for Procter & Gamble in Germany. My background is industrial chemistry, so I did a first degree in industrial chemistry in Nigeria. Then I joined the Erasmus Mundus Masters on Functional Advanced Materials Engineering, which was done between the University of Augsburg in Germany and the University of Bordeaux in France. And in 2016, I joined something related to what you did, Daniel. So I was in the Marie Curie EU-funded ITN project on It was called EGD format, which is European Joint Doctorate on Functional Materials. And I was working on developing sustainable ways for making materials from cellulose. So I worked between KIT in Germany and the University of Bordeaux in France. So I moved between these two universities. And in 2019, I defended in February, and in July, I joined P&G as a research scientist. My research interest is on how to develop ways of making materials from renewable resources, specifically on cellulose. So it's a pleasure to be on the show. And I think there's a lot of interesting part of the journey, right, that doesn't come out when you're given just 2 minutes to talk about your experience. So I think Prince would give us some time to be able to share insights and tips on how other people that are going through this journey can be able to successfully complete it. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Kenny. That was also quite an impressive profile there. Our third panelist will be joining us soon, so I'll let my participants and listeners know. So she introduced herself, Dr. Edith Boche. I think she's having a little bit of challenges now, but she'll join us in the course of the program. So we would go straight into the program of the day. And as excitingly, our panelists introduce themselves to us. I would also like to state that for the listeners, if you have any questions, please feel free to send your questions in the chat section of the Zoom link, and I'll be happy to read your questions to our panelists so they can answer them. So I go again. Why did you decide to pursue a PhD, and what was your starting point? Do you think the motivation for a PhD is important, is an important process in the entire journey? Dr. J, you can go first for us.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, in fact, if you ask of my experience of joining a PhD, mine is a bit different, maybe from many other people. All because when I was in Ghana working at the Ghana Atomic Energy Commission, I happened to be training people from other African countries in the area of radiation and radiation dosimetry. So there was this very good guy that I worked with, who by all the time looking for master's program, because he had already finished his bachelor degree. And when he saw the PhD program, he said, "Oh, Daniel, I think you qualify for this project, so you should apply." In fact, it was just few days to the end of the application deadline. And it was very nice because I had just finished my master's and I had no impression, no intention to go for a PhD by then. I had wanted to work for a bit before going for a PhD. And this guy introduced me, so immediately I prepared for it. And in fact, I submitted my application on the exact time of the deadline. So very, But then interestingly, I made sure that I put all the documents that were required for the position. And I had the motivation for the project which was already described. It was perfectly in line with what I was doing back then. And also I had much interest in that. So it is very important that we get the motivation, because it is out of the motivation we can deliver up to the maximum. In the course of the discussion, I'll be telling you some of the challenges that you face. And if you're not motivated, you can easily withdraw from it. So I had the motivation to apply. Even though it was a very short time, I put all my energy, collected all the documents required, and made sure that I fulfilled every single requirement that was put on the application website. And I'm happy that I pursued such a PhD, and I will tell you the big challenges that I went through in the next session. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. So if I understood you quite well, you're trying to say that motivation is a major driving force in having a successful PhD. So along the line, if you think you want to do a PhD, what are the basic things that you should consider as a motivational factor to be able to go ahead with it?
Yeah, so first of all, you have to know your career path. You need to understand, what is my career path? I was already a research scientist, assistant research scientist. And the requirement to become a research scientist in Ghana by then was to have a PhD. So I knew that if I go for a PhD, I'll become a research scientist and my profile will be increased. So this is a very important motivation. You cannot go for something if you are not motivated, because the truth is that there are so many challenges that you are likely to face during this period of your studies. And I personally was motivated, and I feel that whoever wants to go for a PhD must know why. First, it is a job. So of course you can be paid if you are lucky, if you get a PhD with funding. So that can be a motivation for you. The other part will be, okay, what do you aim at in the future? I want to become this, I want to become a professor, I want to become a researcher, I want to become an engineer. So do you need it? So the motivation for me should be very keen, because if you're not motivated and you face challenges, you'll easily withdraw from it. Thank you very much.
Nice. Kenny, what's your take on it? Why did you decide to pursue a PhD? What was your starting point?
I would say that Daniel has really covered quite a lot of that. For me, it was more about wanting to build expertise in my area of interest. And to be sincere, at the point of applying for a PhD, I was a bit open-minded. I would say I didn't really focus, I was not really looking at a particular field. I knew I wanted to focus in polymer chemistry, but I was still interested in organic-based polymers, all these kind of organic photovoltaic materials. So when I did my master thesis, I worked on cellulose oligomers, and I was making bio-based amphifuels, so like bio-based surfactants. And then it came to me that I've always wanted to work in the area of environmental chemistry, like trying to design materials, having the end life in perspective. So when I saw the opportunity for this PhD program, it kind of just fit into that motivation and passion I had on environment. And I think that really just fits into what Daniel was saying. If you do not have a motivation, you would likely not complete a PhD. I mean, it's one thing to finish a PhD, but it's another thing to successfully finish a PhD, right? Because if you complete a PhD and you cannot feel proud of what you have done, you cannot use it for your next step, you have a certificate that you wouldn't literally use for anything, right? So that passion and motivation is very key. It's why you get up every morning after not getting any result. I mean, I don't believe there's nothing like any result, but not getting the kind of result you are looking for, and you still go to the lab and still do the same thing. And, you know, so what will keep you going every day for the next 3 years or more if you are not highly motivated? So you need to be really motivated on the topic you are doing. You need to be connected, right? Because I always say PhD is a baby. So you need to own it. Like, you need to feel that this is mine. I'm going to give it everything until it's delivered. So yes, motivation is definitely a big factor of being able to successfully complete a PhD program.
Oh, that's nice. So if I kind of understood you well. You both of you are trying to say that when you're in order to complete a successful PhD, you need that drive, which is the motivation. That drive that will push you out of your bed every morning to go to the lab. And that drive that can give you the energy to be able to execute whatever research that you are doing without giving up, even when the failures come. Yes, they will come, but you will not give up because you have that motivation to complete.
Exactly.
And not because you want to have that PhD just for the sake of the title.
Exactly. I mean, if you just look at the title, which is the end, right? That is the result. And you forget that there is a journey, you would literally not, you would drop it for sure. Because the journey, it's 90%. You don't defend your PhD. There's no justification for saying that your PhD that was done in 3 years can be defended in 1 hour. You know, the whole 99.9% was done before the day of the defense. So that journey, if you are focused only on that 1% where you get the degree, then how do you deal with the 99%, right? So you need to have that drive and motivation to go through it.
Right, right. So this brings me to my next question. So what are some of the do's and don'ts when applying for a PhD position? Assuming I'm a fresh undergraduate or I'm a fresh graduate student and I want to do a postgraduate degree, which is a PhD. What are some of the do's and don'ts that I should consider? Daniel, you can take it first for us.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thank you very much. As a requirement all the time, and in most cases, unless you do an accelerated PhD, you will need a master's degree or a postgraduate degree. And so these are some of the basic, requirements that you need to have. And you need to prepare your motivation letter, which is also very crucial and important because most of them, supervisors would want to see what you are capable of so they can examine whether you can be taken or not. So you have to give much attention to your motivation letter also. And then you have to look at the keywords, as I said in the beginning. For instance, if you are going to have a PhD in, say, radiation dosimetry, there might be issues mentioned like dose, gray, and so on. These are important key points that when writing your motivation, you have to mention them, that you have the competence in these areas. Yes, it's very difficult because from master's program into a PhD, basically, and in general perspective, you have no idea on what will be on the project. But looking at the application description, you have to have all these things in mind and write appropriately some of these terms, which are very good for the supervisor to know that, yes, you have the competence. In addition, you need to have the scanned copies of all your documents, your degrees and everything, so you can upload them. If most of the applications are done online, yes, you need to get all of them. And be prepared that you are going for something that will shape your future, as we have made clear in the beginning from the discussion. Look at the topic. Are you interested? Are you motivated to do it? What do you think are the future perspectives regarding this topic or application that you want to make? Are you competent enough to handle? These are very key things that you have to also look at. Don't be scared in applying as many as possible. Try to make all the applications. I have a friend who applied like 500 times. So even some of the, after the responses, by just seeing a word, he knows he has been refused because he had experience of, being refused. And fortunately, he was one of my friends who got one of the best PhD positions because he was well paid. So don't be scared to make applications. Once you see them, apply. And keep applying. Being able to apply more and more gives you the motivation to modify your CV, your motivation, gather your documents. So you gain the experience even in the process of making the applications. So never be scared. Keep applying and be motivated of what you want to achieve. And when you put all these together, you will know what you want and you go somewhere, which we will come out with in the course of the discussion. Because of the time, I try to cut down certain things. Yes, thank you very much.
Right, Dr. J. And just a follow-up question before I go to Dr. Kenny. And let's say I want to apply for a PhD, but I have not seen any open PhD offer. Is it right to approach personally some research groups or professors and ask them politely, do you have a PhD offer? And also in doing so, what are some of the things that I need to do? Do I need to attach my CV? Do I need to attach an already prepared proposal? And how do I go around that?
Yeah, thank you very much. In fact, I have been successfully in this part because I have gathered some students who have received, even today, I have a student who is going to America for his PhD, all because I asked him to make a prior contact with a professor in the US. Unfortunately for him, initially the professor said, oh, I don't have funding, but if I have a funding, I'll contact you. And today, he has all his documents to go to the US. So if we have our profiles online, all the professors and researchers have their profiles online. And so it's important, if you have no idea whether the supervisor has something or not, to contact politely. And yes, there's nothing wrong sending your CV and your certificates. At the end of the day, your certificate is your certificate. Wherever it goes, it will go to many places because of the data management legal issues. When you even submit your application to a university, whether you are picked or not, they tell you they'll keep your data. So there's nothing to hide anymore today. So yes, submit your application with all your documents, motivation, even if you can write it. And then your CV, your certificates, your transcripts, put them before him. And if he sees, mostly when the professor will write to you that, okay, at the moment I don't have funding, but if I have a funding, I'll contact you. And it's so interesting that most students who do that, they are being contacted back by the supervisor, and they don't give regard to any other one who applies for the position. So this is very important. It's not a crime to contact any professor if the need be, even if you don't have the topic. And it serves other people very well. So I deem it a very good approach.
Nice. Dr. Kenny, what's your view on this?
I share similar perspective as Daniel. So when it comes to the do's and the don'ts in applying for a PhD position, I think there is one aspect that sometimes we always leave out, but it's true. So if you think about us international students completing our masters abroad, and knowing that the next step is either we have something doing or we would have to go back home. And so it's always just coming like the next step is to do a PhD. And even that next step could even go a bit out because you are literally looking for any PhD offer available, right? So you just want to stay back and say, okay, I would go through it and deal with it. But for you, the focus is more like you want to stay back in Europe. So this is sometimes where we find ourselves, and we have to be real that this happens. So if this is the situation, of course, you have to be aware that in the next 3 years, if it's something you are not interested in, then you would perhaps have a lot of issues along the line. Now, in terms of applying for a PhD position, I would say that it's very important if you have the option, which is something you can do when you are making an application, to go through the topics and see if it's something you can connect to. Then, of course, this is one kind of applications, because some applications you have projects with funds. Then you can also use the unsolicited approach, which is just to contact a professor. I always say do a kind of background check. So don't just send an email to every professor that you Google online. So do a bit of check, go know their research area. I always tell my mentees to even do a bit of like FBI check, like check their LinkedIn, what are they posting on, check their Twitter, are they approachable? And so you can even use some of these platforms to approach professors. And I've also had mentees that successfully made very good contacts this way. So there is really no one way of doing it, but you just need to be out there and put yourself out. So don't feel like they are not going to respond. Besides, if they don't respond or they respond, you still get the same answer you have now, which is nothing, right? So don't just be there being afraid to approach. Then when you approach, again, it is very helpful for you to, like I always say, try to understand what you can bring to them, right? So if you just come to a professor and say, I'm so person, I did a first degree in this, I would like to be a master's student in your lab. Okay, what are you bringing? So what is the person doing that you think there is an area that you could close the gap? It doesn't mean literally that would be your project, but it also shows that you understand what the person is doing and you are able to think out of the box what could be a possible area that they might consider. So come in, be unique. There is no one original template where you can use for all professors. Everybody is different, just as we, so when you approach someone, you have to be unique. I know that I wrote to like 50 professors when I was looking for a master's and PhD position way back in Nigeria. And when I look at those emails today, I just laugh that, come on, Kenny, who would have responded to this? Because I was just going to a professor, I went to a website, I saw the names, I said, okay, I changed this name, put this one, change a bit of words, and so I could send like 10 emails a night. It doesn't make sense. So it's better to send one good email versus sending 50 emails that literally amounts not even to one. So make sure you give in your best, because you don't know what is going to make the difference. Maybe the professor could be interested in you, but you have not approached properly. So it's better to make sure that, yes, it's a lot of work to make all these applications, but please, when you want to do it well. What is worth doing is worth doing well, right? So this will be my own thought. Right.
I totally agree with your concluding statement that if you want it done, you have to get it done well. And if I may, I would add that if, for example, if you want to apply for a PhD in geoscience, but you don't see any geoscience offer open any around, you can just possibly go through or surf the internet, look for professors that you'd be willing or you would want to work under them, probably see the kind of research areas that they are doing, and then send that person an email stating that you've gone through their profile, you are interested in what they do, specifically or especially these publications that they publish, you read it, and it's something that you, even if you did not fully understand what the publication is about, it's a way of telling the professor or the scientist that you are enthused or you are very self-motivated in doing the research, and you would be able to integrate into their research group. So that's a good remark that both of you gave. And
can I add something little to that?
Yes.
Can I add something little to that?
Sure.
Yes. In fact, my experience, personal. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, sure. You can go ahead.
Okay. Yes, my personal experience with this, when I applied for my PhD position, I checked the main supervisor, because with Erasmus, you have several supervisors. I had about 3 of them. But then I wrote to the main supervisor in King's College London to express my interest that, in fact, and even I listed some of his publications. I was clever by then. I listed some of his publications and I said, yes, I'm very interested in what he's been doing. For instance, I have read these publications from you. In fact, I took time to read his publications. And maybe I was lucky because I mentioned some of his publications that I had already read. And immediately he replied me that, okay, I have people who have applied and I will consider your application. I said, okay, thank you very much. Then later on, he wrote to me, okay, you have to apply also through the King's College London online website procedure. I said, okay. So even when I started and I encountered problems with some of the things I didn't know what to put, I didn't have address in the UK. Even I had to write the motivation again because it's also another portal. He drafted a new motivation for me. So in fact, things were getting clearer for me that, okay, this guy will get it. And I think the motivation is that I was able to pinpoint what he does. So he felt I knew what I was looking for.
Yeah.
So I understand, Dr. Kelly, that you need to know the professor, even not to see, but read about him.
From their work, yes.
From
Absolutely.
their work, yes. Know what they are doing and catch them by pointing on some of their publications. They are so excited when they know you are reading their papers. And so this trick, I think, can work for maybe other people. Thank you very much.
Yeah, nice. And I must add, there are lots of PhD offers that take on fresh undergraduate students. And there are some that you do not need a master's degree for. But before you can get all these programs, you need to carve your CV. You need to carve your motivating letters in a very special way, because doing a PhD out there, For example, in Europe, it's considered as a work experience. So you are not just a student. It's called a formation. A formation is you are being in training to be a scientist. So you are considered as a junior or an early career researcher. So don't think that you would, if you want to do a PhD, probably you need a master's degree, which in some cases is a prerequisite. But there are some PhD offers that do not ask for these things. So before you would want to do a PhD, make sure that you have read through all the other options that are available to you. I sometimes post PhD offers and I request that the person should have a master's degree. But I see people with bachelor's degree applying. Clearly, even if you have a first class with 1.00 GPA, it means you do not pay attention to details.
Yeah.
And that is a no-no for a PhD, because as a researcher, you need to have a critical mind that pays attention to details. So this is just a giveaway that I would want to give, aside from the rich contents that our panelists are giving. So I don't know if Kenny, you have anything to add, else I just move on to the next question.
Yeah, I would add, no, Prince, I think you've just hit the point, because so the first thing that you need to do is to check if you are eligible for any application, right? Are you eligible to apply even before you put in the work? And one way to do it, if the requirements are not very clear, if some areas are gray, it's always best to contact them, send them an email and describe who you are. I am so person, I have this qualification. Am I eligible for this position? Sometimes they need specific fields. They might say, we need someone with biological science background, and maybe you have chemistry background, right? It's still kind of applied science. And you write them that I have chemistry, but I've done so courses under biology or biological science. Does this make me eligible? If they tell you yes, go ahead, you apply. If they say no, then you don't even work on it. So if you are not eligible for any application, don't apply and hope that somehow things would happen. I mean, you're on one hand, you are not paying attention to details, so your application will likely not be considered. But on the other hand, you are wasting time that you could have used to apply for those that you have more chance to succeed. Even if you love the area, as long as you are not eligible to apply, then there is no point applying. So this is very important.
Maybe one more thing. There is someone who has put a question. I know the coordinator would ask the question.
Yes. I'll come to that. But before I come to the question from our listeners, this question I'm going to pose is very dear to me. And in your opinion, in your expert opinion, and also for the benefit of our listeners, which should be given more importance? A PhD from a top university, but with a less helpful supervisor, or a PhD from a less known university, but with a super helpful supervisor?
Well, that's a very intriguing question. Well, it's a big question, but let's look at it this way. I describe a PhD as a cottage, a small village mounted on a hill. And there is a supervisor who has all the tools to get you to this hill, to unravel what is in the cottage, well decorated with all the colors, lightning like a Christmas tree. But there is no path to this hill. And there is a valley. You stand on one side of a hill, and there is a valley in between you and the other hill. So the road is very rough. But the one with the tools is your supervisor. And you have the strength to weed, to cut. For those of us who have come from the village, you might understand what I mean. So, and there are rivers, there are trees along this path, but there's no road, but you have to cut the trees, you have to clear the rivers, you have to do a lot of things. And so the supervisor who has the tools, when you cut, you come back to come for another tool, because it's not all the tools that could be used throughout, or only one tool that could be used throughout. So the supervisor is a key thing in your PhD project. Even though your supervisor will tell it's your own work, But indeed, it's not you alone who can achieve it. 2, PhD is you. It's not the university. It is what you can bring on board, what defines you, what you are capable of, your strength, your desire are the key things that are important to drive you. The rank of the university is a point. I'm not saying it's not a good thing. It's a point. It gives you 1 point in your career path. Oh, he went to this university, yes. Oh, he attended this university, yes. But as Dr. Kavichi said, at the end of the day, what will you use your PhD for if you are not able to put it into practical use? It becomes useless and you become like a virtual doctor. You just have the name, but you don't exist. So the university is good. If you have a good, recognized university, fine. But your supervisor has to be with you, has to go with you, and you have to also go with him because he has the tools and you need it. So we cannot ignore this aspect. So I will go for a very helpful supervisor. And as Dr. Amaniampon said, PhD is a training. It's all over the world. It's not only in France. Even though in France we call it job, but all over the world, it's a training. And who gives the training? The training is given by somebody who knows it or somebody who has been through it. So you need a very supportive supervisor. Within my supervisor, I wanted to give the story of my PhD, but because of the time, my supervisor in London died 7 months on my arrival, just after 7 months. But within the 7 months, I had traveled to about 5 countries with different training programs. So he really prepared me, even within the few months, very competent, because I had been to Belfast University in the biological lab to study radiobiology. I had been to Stockholm University to study radiobiology and immunofluorescence and so on. I had been to Pavia University to study simulation of radiation interaction. So my medical physics background was improving, was gaining ground within the first few months. And even he had prepared me to go to the US to study also. So, and I was in the US for 5 days at the radiological department lab to study, to understand irradiation of single cells, a lot of things within these few months. So your supervisor is key in your PhD studies. But at the end of the day, it prepares you for the future. Your school can be high class, but if you don't have a good supervisor, that will guide you to achieve what you want. In fact, it will not go well with you. You come out from a big university, but you will never be recognized. So I'll hold it on here, and maybe in the next discussion, I'll come out with more. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Dr. J, that is quite very, very informative. Kenny, do you want to add something?
Yes, I think Daniel just spoke my mind. So I always say that a PhD is a relationship. I mean, I like the illustration that you used. I see it as a relationship of 3 different parties. You, your supervisor, and your thesis, right? So the thesis is part of this relationship, and you are the center of it. You manage the relationship. You see that the 3 aspects, I didn't even mention the university. It's a good to have, but it's not, I would say it's the list of the 3 main things that I consider are important for a successful PhD. The first is the project. You need to be motivated about the project. The second is the supervisor. Then the third is the school. I mean, the school here, I mean the resources and facilities. So does the university or the lab you're working with have everything you need to be able to do things that you need to do on time, right? So if you need to do an NMR, for example, and you need to wait 1 week, so your synthesis would be planned. You do 1 synthesis today, you can't do it the next day simply because your tests, your results are not out, right? So that facility is what I consider as the third aspect, which is in the university. So the supervisor, it's so important. if you have a good supervisor, you come out with a PhD that you can be proud of, that would put you in position with anyone, anywhere. I always say that I didn't even know KIT as a university when I was applying for this project. I didn't know it was one of the top ranked university in Germany. I didn't care, but I just knew that the guy that was there is one of the best in his field. And so he was very supportive, and it made everything possible. So I could not go close to what I achieved in my PhD if I didn't have very supportive supervisor. So without a supportive supervisor, the university doesn't help you, right? So because you don't come out and say, oh, I came from Harvard, and what did you make? What was the outcome of your PhD? Because your supervisor was always in all the conferences, never having time to interact with you. You would suffer, literally. It doesn't matter the campus or the university name that you have. So supervisor over any university, I would go for a good supervisor for sure, anytime, any day.
Yeah, that's powerful. And to add to what you both said, I do agree with you. I mean, in most universities, that is something that graduate students intending to pursue a PhD do not look out for. In most universities, your PhD supervisor is the one who awards you the PhD.
Yes.
If the PhD says for 3 years, the university gives their guidelines, a PhD for 3 years. Your supervisor can say, my student is good enough to get his PhD after 2 years. The university has no say. They will give you a PhD. After 3 years, if your supervisor says, my PhD student is not good enough to get a PhD, the university will not give you the PhD. So your supervisor is a key ingredient in preparing your PhD dish. And so you must have a good relationship with your supervisor. You can be a brilliant first-class student. If you don't have a good relationship with your supervisor, you will not finish your PhD.
You will not.
You will not finish.
You will not finish.
Because PhD at the end of the day is never finished, right?
It's never finished.
Okay, now you can go. So
exactly, and the kind of research that you'll be doing is an open-ended research, and so you will need a good supervisor who can guide you to tell you when and where to close your research to form a very solid PhD thesis. So if you are in a very good top-class university, your supervisor is famous, world-known, he's a world-class scientist, but he has no time for you, you will not have a good PhD.
Absolutely.
You will come out to say, I am from Harvard, I am from NTU, I am from Oxford, my supervisor is a Nobel Prize winner, but they ask you, oh, okay, so this topic you did, what is that? And you cannot contribute scientifically. Your PhD become porous and horrible. So this is a key thing we must put it at the back of our mind, that we must go for a supportive PhD supervisor who will be there with you from the beginning of your PhD till the very end of your PhD research. Thank you very much.
Very true. Yeah.
So,
my supervisor in Poland most of the time shared the same hotel room with me when we were negotiating for some experiments in different labs. He had to go with me to this city in Poland. And most of the visits we made, we had to share, the same hotel in order to, cut down costs. And so he was with me. And I am always proud that throughout my PhD, I faced challenges, but I had people who were very supportive. And that puts me in a highlight that I did a good job. I got several awards during my PhD, and I attended a lot of training programs and conferences. So this is what I'm proud of. So getting a very good supervisor, and I think all of us here, the panelists, we must be good supervisors too. We must be good supervisors to our students in order to bring them to the same joy that we have received.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks very much, Dr. J. And this is a short announcement. You can please follow us on YouTube if you haven't seen our previous episodes at AfroScience Network, where you can actually subscribe there and follow us. So when we upload our episodes and you did not have the time to join us, you can freely watch those previous episodes there. And if you have any question, you can just go to the chat section and then you key in your questions there, and I'll read your questions to the panelists. So I have a first question from Frank Kusi, And he says, hello, doctor. I am glad to be on this webinar. I was invited by Dr. J, who has been a mentor to me since my undergraduate. My question is, did Dr. J had any research proposal prepared already to meet the deadline on a recommended PhD at Atomic Energy? So Daniel, please tackle this for us quickly, then we move to the next question.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, he's been one of my mentees. In fact, I didn't have, as I said, somebody even introduced the publication of the PhD project to me. I didn't see it. It was a guy who already had, he was looking for a master's degree, and he, in the process of it, found it and said, no, Daniel, you qualify. So I had no preparation for that. But when he told me it was left with 3 days to the deadline, by then I had not even my transcripts, but I spent nights. All the 3 days, I think, was dedicated for that. So I never had the motivation, but I wrote a good motivation. I sent to somebody who supervised me during my master's to also correct it for me, because it's important. He corrected it. I had to arrange to get my transcripts and my certificates immediately because they were not even ready. So and you know, by then, that was 2012. By then, the internet facility in Ghana wasn't so much. So I had to go to the cafe, as we say all the time. I had to go to the cafe and paid money. And even when the guy was closing, I had to pay the guy extra money in order to stay, because at home I had no internet. So I put a lot of energy. Frankly speaking, I spent sleepless nights in order to achieve it, because I saw the motivation. I saw the topic it really attracted me. So I gave in all in order to win. It was my first experience because I had not applied to any PhD program before, but I put in a lot. And then I consulted people to read through my motivation for me, to check. I didn't have a strong CV. I had publications too, but wasn't as strong as probably you see today. But I made sure I made it very concise, clear, and the information was up to what was expected. As Dr. Kelechi said, key points. What is mentioned in the advertisement? Look at the keywords they used: radiobiology, medical physics, radiation protection. And these were the things that I had learned. So I had to capture on those key points in order to get attraction. So this is what I did. I didn't have any motivation already written. Thank you very much.
Right. I think I don't know if Cyril, you can hear me. I think our third panelist is here. If you can make her a panelist, we'll be happy to have her. I'll wait for her to join us as panelist. Then I'll move on to the next question. Do I need to have a published paper in my master's before I get accepted in a PhD? This is from Letitia. Kelly, can you take that?
I would say that it really depends. So most times you might have an unpublished work, but you have the experience, right? So I mean, I might be wrong, but I've not really seen a lot of offers that say you must have a publication. I think they always ask you should have so skills and background. So you might not have a publication, but take care of those requirements. What are they looking for? And see how you can capture it in your CV. So for example, they are looking for someone with a background, again, let's say biological science or radiography, and you did some lectures, maybe during your undergraduate, or you were in a lab that did some work on that. That's how you now personalize and make your CV less generic. So your CV needs to be always unique to the position you're applying to. It's a lot of work, but that's how it should be. So you need to make your CV read out to someone as why this CV is meant for this particular position. So you might not have a publication, yes, but do you have those research skills and background? And is it visible on your CV that you have them? So this is how you can generate that interest without necessarily having a publication. You could also have other types of maybe oral presentation. Most times we forget that we did a bachelor thesis. I always tell my mentees, remember you did a bachelor thesis. What did you do? Where is it recorded? Where is it kept? If it's not published, what did you learn from it? Can you capture that in your CV? So make sure that you show, especially for a PhD, you need to have demonstrated that you have research background and experience. So this is more important, and that you have that experience and skills that they are looking for. Most times, even theoretically, right? But how do you articulate it and transfer it and communicate it would make the person understand that, yes, this person has the background, might have not used this equipment, but if they are taught, nobody would put you in front of an NMR and say, use this. They will teach you, right? But you need to know what is happening behind this. So that's more important than, say, having a publication.
Yeah, that's very true, and I do agree with it. I mean, the point of doing a PhD is not to have a publication. The point of doing a PhD is to create something new which does not already exist. I mean, make a significant contribution to science. If you get a publication, yes, it's better. But most importantly, some supervisors prefer if you can even get a patent. That means that you've actually advanced the course of science. So coming into doing a PhD, I think having a publication at the master's level is not something that is really given a spotlight. Yeah, so we move on to the next question. I don't know if Edith it's here. Cyril, if Edith is here, please enable her microphone to join us. Edith, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear
okay,
me?
nice. Good to have you. I think
you.
I think we had challenges in the time differences. So
yeah, I don't know. My time translator for some reason. I don't know if the clock changed today because yeah. Anyway, sorry about that.
Yeah, is it possible to activate your video because I can't see you? I don't know if
I have.
Yes, I can see her. She just went off now.
Okay.
But I could see
am
her.
I back on, Kiliku?
Yes, you're back.
Okay.
Okay, nice. So can you just in like 30 seconds tell our listeners who you are, and then I'll follow up with your questions to guide them.
Okay. Thanks very much, Prince. Sorry everyone for turning up late. So my name is Edith Botre. I grew up in Ghana and studied in Ghana. I did my bachelor's in the University of Ghana, did my national service, and then I followed on with my master's in the Netherlands. And in my master's, I studied cognitive neuropsychology. And after that, so that was between 2013 and 2015. And after that, I moved to Australia in 2015 to start my PhD. So that I finished that in 2019, and now I'm working with DK University. Thank you.
Okay, nice. That's quite an impressive profile. I would ask you this question. I have not asked the other panelists. Should a graduate student be concerned about their PhD subject from the onset of the application? Or in your opinion, you think that's not the most important thing?
Okay, thanks, Prince. I think that having an idea, so I think this may differ depending on the lab you're going to, and I'm saying that because when I was in the process of applying my PhD, I had quite varied opportunities. I had two main opportunities and a third one, and among those three, there was one that offered more than one project. So there was like, okay, you could do this and you could do that and you could do that. But at the end of the day, I went in for the one that was offering me a single project. And that's because I felt like it's important to know as a PhD from the onset of the program, it's important to have an idea of what you're going to do broadly. I think it gives you some guarantee about your process and how you're going to finish it. And so at the stage of searching for the PhD, it's important opportunity. It's important to at least know what your interest is, know what fascinates you, know what interests you, because the PhD is a long journey. It could take you between 3 years to sometimes 5 to 6 years. And if you don't have a sustained interest in the field you're going to or in the projects you're going to, it may be really hard to keep up. So it's important to make sure that the topic is maybe not the exact topic, but at least the field is clear to you. Because in the PhD that I did, so what I chose, I proposed a topic And at the start, it was still, of course, I was coming in from a master, so it wasn't refined, but we went through that refinery process and refined that idea with time. So I think that sustained me because it was something that I wanted to do. It's something that I was passionate about, and I had to finish it. So I think it's important to know that before you start.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And before I go to the questions from our listeners, and this is another question I want to pose to you, Eddie, because I've asked majorly the questions to our other two participants. At what point did you decide to do a PhD? Was it when you finished your master's and you didn't have a job, so in order to escape being jobless, you said, let me go do a PhD? At what point?
Partly that. Partly that. No, I'm kidding. I should say thank you for Daniel and Keleweku. I'm so sorry for messing up your name. Kelechuku, for covering up for me. Yeah. So for me, I did my master's in the Netherlands, like I said. And during the Netherlands is it's a Dutch speaking country, as most of us will know on the call. So during the masters, like I love that place and I wanted to maybe stay there a bit, but I realized that the English was a problem. And in my field, in neuropsychology, I wanted to work in a clinical setting at some point. I realized that if I could not speak Dutch, it was going to be a bit of a long journey to get into where I wanted to be in my professional career. I had a couple of conversations with people in the capacity to hire. Whether they will hire me essentially was a question. And they're like, we will hire you, but at this moment, if someone speaks Dutch, we will prefer them over you. So that gave me a bit of clarity around what I can expect within that setting. When I left Ghana in 2013, my idea was that I'm going for 2 years, do my master's, and I'm coming back to Ghana. And a very wise man told me, you're not coming back to for a while. The reason why I decided to do the PhD was because at some point in my master's, I realized that I want to make an impact. I want to make a significant contribution to science and neuropsychology, to be precise. And I realized that going back to Ghana with my master's will not give me the voice and the ability to make the impact at the level that I wanted to. So that was when I decided looking into PhD opportunities. So I started quite early. I started looking into PhD, I think, a year before my master's finished. It was a 2-year master's. So I started like reading around the topics and looking into that very quite early. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if you wanted me to talk about my search process as well, but yeah.
Well, I mean, the other two panelists covered it.
Yes,
So,
yes,
but
yeah.
I want you to, I want to have your opinion on this, and for the benefits of our listeners also. In your personal expert opinion, a PhD from a top-notch university with a less helpful supervisor, and one from a less known university but with a super helpful supervisor, which is more important?
That's a very tricky question, and I was looking forward to hearing what the other panelists will say about this, because I thought when I read the question, I thought, well, this one is quite tricky. Personally, I think that the success of a PhD depends a lot on the relationship between yourself and the supervisor, the quality of that relationship, but also their dedication to turning things in early and helping you to finish things on time. I believe a lot of us on the call are will be international students. When we are doing the PhD, or even when we are in our home countries, we would have timelines to finishing the PhD. So having that helpful supervision can be very helpful. I found myself asking what helpful meant in that question, whether it was helpful in terms of support with the whole process, or helpful in terms of how good they are with their work ethic.
I mean, let me clarify. Helpful in terms
Yeah.
of how you get baked, well baked at the end of your PhD.
Well baked at the end of the PhD. Okay.
How impactful they will contribute to you being a good researcher.
Okay, I would go for a PhD in a less, well, prestigious university with a helpful supervisor. Um, I think you could have a PhD in a very prestigious university with less impact, and like our other panelists have said, you want to make significant impact at the end of your PhD, and if you don't have that supportive environment to help you get that, it would be very difficult for you to make progress in your career. One of the big parts is how long it takes you to finish. For example, if you're in a frustrating environment where you don't feel supported, it may take you really long to finish it. And by the end of it, you may be like, I'm out of here. I just don't want to do this anymore in academia. Um, on the other hand, if you're in a less impact, well, less ranked university with a very helpful PhD supervisor, you may get great opportunities that you couldn't even imagine getting from where you the other option. They may introduce you to people that may transform your career forever. Um, just being prompt on your work, like sending things to them and they replying to you, can make a huge difference, because it means you're probably going to get more publications out of the PhD, and that's part of the impact process. You're going to meet more people. They'll give you flexibility to explore your talents and grow in different areas. So that would be my personal opinion on that.
Right. Thank you for your answer on that. So I have this question from Larry. Is it advisable to send messages to professors via LinkedIn, or a formal email is better? Edith, can you take that for us?
Um, Yeah, thanks, Larry, for that question. That's a tricky one in this age that we're in, because social media has become so part of us. And LinkedIn versus email, I would go for email, because I think even now, email is still considered a very official route of communication. And if you, for example, want to introduce yourself to someone for the first time, I would go for email instead of LinkedIn.
Okay. Kelly, what do you think?
And I agree with her. I think it also depends on whether you want to solicit for a position. I wouldn't go and write a professor on LinkedIn that I'm looking for a master's position. I would rather use the email. But if you want to like build a relationship, right? So if you're following this person on LinkedIn, you are commenting on his post, of course you can reach out informally, right? And just get to know the person. So it depends on what you are looking for, right?
Okay, okay. I will also add that I never read academic position like PhD and masters through LinkedIn. And
Yeah.
if I put job offers on LinkedIn and you send your CV to me through LinkedIn, I will not even have a read at it. So
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
sending emails are always the best option. Daniel, this question is for you. Can a graduate of physics without any experience regarding health physics gets an MSc or MSc to PhD offer in US, UK, and Europe? Well, I don't know why he said UK and Europe. So
Maybe because of where I have been to before. Okay, thank you very much. Yes, the person can get an admission. You know, physics is an area that you cannot easily have an experience because you need sophisticated equipment and stuff to work with. And so the people in the field understand that if you are from a developing country, some of the equipment are not available to really work with. And so, yes, you can. What is important is look at the requirements for applying for an MSc abroad. For instance, if you want to go to the US, some of the universities require you to write GRE. And some of them specifically want you to write the GRE in physics, not the general one. You have to write in physics and get certain marks to be able to qualify to apply. Because if you only want to go for MSc, this is it. And not in the US, basically. And most of them also prefer that you go, even if you have masters, they still want you to go through another master's before you proceed on to a PhD. This is typically in Canada and some of the universities also in the US. So yes, you can apply. And also in the UK, most of the PhD programs in the UK, we have what we call progressing into a PhD. So your first year is normally considered as a preparation for PhD. So after first year of your admission into a PhD, even though you're admitted into a PhD, you make a progression. So you make a presentation to present what you have done so far during your first period of your studies and so on. So you don't really have to get an experience to apply for masters. Your bachelor degree and your transcript are very important. That is why you need to excel, because for most programs abroad, at least you need a second class upper to be able to apply for a bachelor, a graduate program, a master's degree or something. So if you get something lower or a pass or just, it's difficult. But if you have a second class upper, you can easily qualify. And also you need to look at the English requirements. In some countries, for instance, if you are going to the UK, some of them requires you to have IELTS, but I think as a Ghanaian, by some, I didn't apply for write IELTS. I used my degree and took a letter from the English department that I was trained throughout my education with English, so it was enough and I was accepted. So maybe you can check. You don't need to also write such an examination so that you can apply.
Okay.
But the experience is from bachelor to master's. I don't think you need any experience. And it's difficult to even have experience during that period. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Daniel. I quickly move on to the next question, and because of time, we try to make our answers quite brief and succinct.
Yeah.
This question is from Enid, and the question is there any advantage about contacting an associate professor for supervision over a professor? Is there any difference between the two? Kenny, you want to take that for us?
Yes, I would say that at the level, anybody that puts up a position, right, that is looking for a PhD to hire is qualified to supervise you. And just like we spoke initially about supervisor student relationship, that's more important than whether the person is a professor and associate prof. It doesn't make a lot of difference. And one thing you should remember is that if you are with a very big name, I think we mentioned this earlier, that will not support you, right? Or I always advise people, go to people that are early. Associate professors are hungry, right? They want to publish because they want to grow. So you are sure, of course, to be put under a lot of pressure, but you would be more productive versus an already well-known professor that is just like almost getting to retirement. He has all the experience, name and everything, but he would not be the person that would go through your manuscript and give you a response in 1 month or even 2 months or even 3 months. So I would not look into those names as a criteria for selecting who I want to contact. I would look more towards someone that is actively publishing. So please look at their publication history, okay? If you see someone that their last publication was 2020 and they have no other publication, then it might be, if you could select, right? I would be more concerned with that area. So I wouldn't care whether it's an associate prof or a professor. That's not important, at least.
Okay, thanks for that. This question is from Mubarak and I give it to Edith. How can a graduate student best identify a research area? Should it be based on passion alone or future opportunities in the research area? And also I lump this question from Violet to it. How do you locate a super helpful supervisors? How do you locate super helpful supervisors?
Yeah, those are good questions. With regards to the first question, I think, yeah, passion and future prospects. You want to look at what your next steps with the PhD, after the PhD are going to be and what the prospects are. So probably you've got like 2 options of things you're considering. Should I go for this one or this one? I'm equally passionate about them. If you think that for you practically, you're going to do better and you have a safer job, a career with the other option, then you can go for that if you are passionate about that. And I forgot the second part, there was a second part to that question, sorry.
How do you locate a super helpful supervisor?
Super helpful supervisor. Yeah, that's a tricky one, especially when you can't see the person. But I was gonna say, as part of like the preparation notes that I made, that before you accept a PhD with somebody and go into the lab, you want to at least have one meeting with the person, not in person. It could be online. That I found that to be very helpful for my application process. At least you want to have a meeting with a person. Of course, you would have exchanged a couple of emails and how they feel about how the person communicates and all that. But I feel like talking to someone is very different from email communication, and so you wanna do that because you may pick up some cues and you know how the person relates to other people and all that. When I was applying for my PhD, I had one conversation with my supervisor, and in the first about 3 minutes into the call, she speaks very fast, and a lot of Aussies have that, and she just kept going, and I just went, I'm sorry, I didn't hear anything that you said, can you repeat it slower? And so the way she took that even lets you know the kind of person that they are. But another part of that is maybe talking to someone in the lab. So asking them to link you up with other lab members, or just looking on their profile and linking up with someone in the lab to just maybe ask about the university, ask about the city, and ask about the lab experience so that you know how they are progressing. And like Kelechuku said, you want to check the publication record because that tells you to some extent how productive the person is and their work ethic and all that. You want to look a bit into their background to know. So these would be my tips. Yeah.
Right, I do agree with you. This is the next question to Daniel from Benjamin. I'm a bit confused. I have registered as a PhD student, but struggling to get a topic. No clear direction from my supervisor at all. Any help?
Okay. Yes, I have received couple of emails from people that typically from Ghana that they have started a PhD, but they do not have a clear topic. So, yes, I understand the problem because we are from there, but you need to pursue a PhD, and so you register without knowing precisely what you want to do. In the general perspective, that is not a good practice to start with. You don't apply to a university to pursue a PhD when you don't have. But this is what happens. It happens a lot. I have people from Ghana who write to me on that. But you need to identify a professor. You are fortunate. Now in the University of Ghana, the PhD is more or less 4 years. You have a 1-year coursework and then 3 years of research. So it means that at least even if you don't have a topic, you have 1 year to listen to lectures from different people and identify a particular professor and say that, okay, I'm interested in the course you are teaching. Can we, discuss maybe a topic of interest so we can pursue a PhD on that? So this gives people an opportunity to have something to start with. And so when people call me, I discuss with them their interests first. And then I leave them to give me some time to think through. I search on the internet and I say, okay, this topic is done, let's say in Germany or in France. And in Ghana, we can look at it from this way. For instance, somebody doesn't have a topic, but he's from radiation protection background. So I said, okay, we can develop a device which can be used to detect radiation. It's expensive outside, but in Ghana, we can just buy a simple diode and do this and do that. And then I try to say that we need to integrate some programming language, like pattern, we write a pattern code to include. So you get a measurement, it plots the graph for you. It's very good because PhD is a training and it helps you to develop a device. I mean, developing a device from it, it's very important in the PhD work, and it's good. So yes, your topic might not be clear, but identify professors that you meet from the coursework you take. Contact them and let's see how you can, do something with it. And we are all available. This is why AfroScience is there. We are available. If you contact us, we can also help fine-tune your topic and help you to look for somebody who can also supervise you. Thank you, and maybe I'll come in later.
All right, that's quite helpful.
Yes, Prince. Thanks, Daniel. I just remember the other part of that question. I think it was about how to find a topic, how to identify.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
And I think Daniel touched a bit on that. So having someone as helpful as Daniel to help you fine tune the topic is helpful. But before you contact Daniel, you should have an idea of where you're going to, where you want to start from, because it just makes it easier. The other thing that I did, which I also advise a lot of my mentees to do, is read research papers around the topic. Just read wide, just keep reading. And then so when you read wide on the so if it's about radiation, you read wide into the area, and as you read, you would find certain things that actually tickle your interest, and just dive deep, allow yourself to dive deep and follow the things that are fascinating you. Just dive deep into that, and you may find that in that process. And also, one other thing that I did was talk to a friend about the options I was thinking about. It's like, I'm interested in stroke, I'm interested in traumatic brain injury, and I'm interested in autism. And I went through this issue process of talking about why I'm passionate about each of them. And that process, just hearing myself talk it out loud, helped me to identify where the passion really was. So yeah.
Nice. I have this question from Abigail to Edith, and she says, here is my question. For instance, during the application process, you had a very helpful supervisor who expressed interest in your research and was instrumental in your admission. Now, during the coursework, you identify a dope supervisor. Is it advisable to switch to that dope supervisor or dope professor?
Hi, Abby. Abigail is my friend in Canada. Hi, Abby. Okay, good question. Abigail. So I think Kilichuku talked about this a little bit when he talked about making a decision between an associate professor and a professor in terms of their availability, and not because they don't want to help you, but because it's just not possible per their workload to give you that level of support. I am interpreting dope here as like a super professor. So I think this is a complicated question, because obviously when you entered your master's, you've got good relationships with this person you're already working with. It comes down to relationship management. You probably want to discuss your decision if you want to move to the other dope professor, whether in this case, I'm interpreting dope to mean that the person is high ranked and very supportive. Okay, so that supportiveness you have to take that box. You want to discuss with them, and probably if that person for you is a potential supervisor for your PhD, it means that they are probably in the same field as your current supervisor, and you could come up with a way for them to work together with you on your PhD. Or if you think there are already tensions that you don't want to cross, then you want to think about how you manage that situation. But I think it's something. It comes down to managing whatever decisions you make well, so that you don't offend the either parties, because academia in my field, for example, it's very small. It's a small circle of people that work. So when you go around, you come back to the same people, and you want to not to please everybody, but you want to manage relationships well as you go. So that would be my take on that. Thanks, Abigail.
Right. Thanks very much, Edith. And I go on to the next question. Okay, from Dino Barton, he says, you skipped my question earlier, so I'll ask again. What would be your advice for doing a PhD in a discipline which is diverse from your previous degrees, even though you have the skills required to complete the project? Kenny, briefly, you want to take that?
Yes, I would say it still comes down to the interest, right? First, if are you qualified to move into that new field? I have seen people that are certainly interested at the moment in data science, and their background doesn't really support that they can go into that field. My advice is always to first check if your current qualification is enough to move into that field. And of course, if it's enough, means you can be admitted. I'm someone that believes that as long as you are willing to put in the work, you could go into any field, right? You could go into fields that are not specifically related to your background, just that it takes more time for you to understand the fundamentals and get into that point of being able to apply it. But first, just check if you can be admitted. And if you can be admitted, then you now need to do a lot of work, 2 times perhaps more than those that have that kind of background to be able to meet up.
Okay, thank you. This question is from Imo. Imo says, how best could I add to my research experience in my research field to boost my chances of being admitted into a PhD without necessarily enrolling for another master's degree? I'm interested in cancer biology, and I need mentors towards my fall 2020 application, please. I got rejected in 2 applications I made for fall 2021. So, Daniel, you want to take that for us briefly?
Yes, I'll try to be brief. If I got, in fact, I didn't catch the first word that you used.
How best could I add to my research experience in my research field to boost my chances of being admitted into a PhD without necessarily enrolling for another master's degree? So it means the person has a master's degree.
And because he has a, okay. Yeah, I understand the point. It means it's just like, just like Dr. Kalichi said, because it means the person has diverted from one research field to the other. I mean, he wants to divert from one field to the other. Yes, as Dr. Kalichi said, it's a very difficult task to change. I happen to go through that but mine wasn't a strong, diverse, but still was a big blow to me. And I had to put extra energy to do that. And as also Dr. Kalichi said, what is the probability that you will be admitted? And that is why probably he was not admitted. I mean, for the fact that you were not admitted doesn't mean you don't qualify, but because there were a lot of applications and, the probability is so less for you to be picked. Yes, you can continue to apply, but look at what is published, what is available for you to apply. Does it fall in line with your previous qualification? For instance, I did physics, bachelor degree in physics and specialized in biomedical physics. Then I proceeded on to a master's degree in radiation protection, and then a PhD in physics and radiobiology. So it was almost along with what I was doing. And then in the course of my PhD, I also branched into development of radiation using laser plasma. So I had to understand laser physics and laser plasma, which was very complicated. So I had to look for training programs, listen to lectures on YouTube. It needed a lot of work to achieve something like that. And it's not an easy task, but you can do it. So first of all, let's try to fine tune our interest. I always say that even though we want to do something great, but our background, where we come from, typically from Africa, you don't choose who you want to be. You are forced to do what, I'm sorry to say that, but this is very clear and important. If you're an African, you don't choose what you want. we put you where your parents even want you to be or where you qualify to be. Because here in abroad, if a child wants to be a medical doctor or something, it's his decision. He only has to follow the course. Even if he doesn't pass, there are some, entry paths to go through to become a medical doctor. But in Ghana, if you don't get certain qualifications, you are kicked out. And so because you don't want to stay at home, you go for, let's say, chemical engineering. And then your interest has changed, but you need to tune your mind to go in that direction and work perfectly. So please be mindful of changing completely. Your career path will not be straightened, and you will need to put a lot of energy in order to develop it. In fact, if you're able to do that, you become so competent. And then you are very accepted in many fields. I work in the chemistry department, I work in the physics, I work in the radiotherapy, I worked in the, so it's all because I learned many, many different fields, but it doesn't make me very competent in a specific field. This is also important to do. But I have a broad mindset. I do a lot of things. I'm happy, but I'm not a very competent in a specific field. If you want to be like my situation, it's another choice, but difficult. Thank you.
Okay, Daniel, thanks very much. And on the issue of mentorship, my colleague Cyril has put our LinkedIn profiles on the chat section. So feel free to follow any of us. And if you need advice on applying for scholarships, even if you already have a PhD and you need advice on your next career path, just feel free to contact any of us and we'll be happy to help you. And also feel free to follow our LinkedIn AfroScience Network connections, and then we'll be posting scholarships that we come across there to help you. And this question says, can I do a PhD with a second class lower and a master's degree? And I would answer you straightforward, yes, you can. Depends on what the offer is asking for. This question says, you skipped my question again. Oh, okay, I think I read this question. Because of time, I'll just skip through and then read one or two questions. This is from Maureen. She says, please, the deadline for the funded PhD I'm applying for is tomorrow. Please, is it still advisable to email a professor after submitting your application to the PhD? Kenny, you want to take that? You are muted.
I'm trying to understand what would be the purpose of emailing the professor if there is a laid down rule on how to apply. So if the process is submit your application to this body, they will do the selection, except it was this professor that gave you the link and asked you to follow up with him that he can do some background support. But other than that, there is really no reason to tell the professor that now I have applied, what next? I mean, you have to wait for the decision to be made.
Right. And I also do agree. I don't know what you think you did, because this is our last question, then we close the
I agree with Kilichika.
Yeah. Okay. So we bring a close to today's episode. I would like to thank you very much, our esteemed panelists. We'll be bringing you back in future. We were able to sustain our listeners for almost an hour and a half. So it means they are even ready to go on with the show. But I think we have to bring a close to it. And thank you all very much. The time differences caused a bit of confusion, but we managed to bring the program to life. And to our listeners, we look forward to having you once again on our next episode, where we'll be having programs on, and the next episode on scholarships, how to get scholarships, how to write your motivation letters, how to look out for supervisors, and be on the watch. We will also be having an AfroScience network or AfroScience talk show poster presentation conference, and it also be virtual. So the main aim is to expose early career researchers in communicating complex scientific ideas to lay people and introduce them into networking and how to get in touch with experienced professors or experienced scientists. So thank you very much. And it was nice having you, Daniel. Edith, and Kenny. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
It was nice to
Prince.
meet you all.
Nice to see you.
Yeah,
Ciao.
nice to meet you too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, thanks. Later.
Okay.
Thank you guys. I think everybody's